Coming up on Southwest Florida in focus, Hurricane Milton's storm surge, winds, rain, and tornadoes left a trail of destruction throughout Southwest Florida. Communities are starting to pick up the pieces and rebuild. We talk to FEMA about the help that's coming and how to apply for it. That's coming up next on WGCU. Coming up on Southwest Florida in focus, Hurricane Milton's winds ripped apart homes, mud and muck flooded structures, and tornadoes devastated communities. People are just starting to rebuild. We talk with a FEMA representative to find out about the help available. And WGCU takes an in-depth look at Florida's vote on abortion rights. Groups on both sides of the issue are reaching out to voters. We dig deeper to find out how Amendment 4 would change current law. Plus, do you have a plan on how to vote in the upcoming election? Find out about changes at the ballot box that might affect how you vote. Hello, I'm Sandra Viktorova. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, this week we got a closer look at the impact in the hardest hit areas of Southwest Florida. Hurricane Milton demolished homes and structures on Manasota Key in Charlotte and Sarasota counties. Across our region, folks are now waiting to find out what help they'll get from their insurance companies and FEMA.
Go it further, let's go offload that.
An army of helpers came to the rescue of Lee Carpenter at a very tough time.
It was overwhelming yesterday. It was just, where do you start?
Members of the Bridge Church helped pick up the mess left behind by Milton at her home in Englewood.
It just means a lot that they're here and that their hearts are so willing to help.
It's a home that she was about to sell until Hurricane Helene hit. She fixed that damage, and then Milton arrived with a storm surge this community has never seen.
But you can see the line right there.
Wow. A few steps away, the damage at her other rental home is worse. She's not sure it's salvageable. She and her husband don't have flood insurance.
Not only are we having to make repairs on these and our other properties, but there's nobody coming to rent, so we're losing rental income as well. So we're retired, and so it's our source of income.
They've applied for FEMA assistance, but don't know what help, if any, they'll be able to get. So what type of help is available to hurricane victims and who qualifies? Joining us now is FEMA spokesperson Reuben Brown. Mr. Brown, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
So, Mr. Brown, if you could start with what is FEMA's role in a hurricane like this, and secondary, how can people get help and who can get help?
Yes, ma'am. Well, FEMA's role is to provide disaster assistance to folks who've been impacted by disaster. Obviously, in Florida, we've had 3 successive hurricanes, namely Debbie, Helene, and Milton. FEMA's been here on the ground since the very beginning, and I counted among those numbers who've been here to help Floridians. And you asked about the type of help that people can get. Before I get into that, I want to just say that the first line of defense is going to be insurance. You know, you pay for it month after month, year after year. Now's the time to access it. Now's the time to make it work for you. If you think that you have uninsured or underinsured losses, that's the time to connect with FEMA. And you can do that one of several ways. You can call 1-800-621-3362. You can go to disasterassistance.gov, or you can download the FEMA app on your iPhone or Android device to apply for assistance that way. And what types of assistance can you expect from FEMA? Well, several types. First of all, rent, repair, replace. In other words, if your primary residence is damaged, FEMA may be able to help you with rental expenses. Also, replacement assistance. If you have personal items that need to be replaced, things to make your home safe, sanitary, and functional, FEMA may be able to help you with that. And also replacement of certain items that are maybe structural components, things to make your home very safe and secure. We may be able to help you with that as well. FEMA may be able to help you with what we call other needs assistance. Things like transportation expenses, childcare expenses, disaster-caused medical expenses, dental expenses. All those things may be eligible for FEMA reimbursement or grants, but the only way to find out is to call the number 1-800-621-3362, go to disasterassistance.gov, or download the FEMA app on your iPhone or Android device. And hopefully we can assist you with one of those items.
Can you take us through the process of applying?
Absolutely. Well, as I mentioned, it's going to be a call, a click, or a text. You make that connection with FEMA. A caseworker will then take your information. We will assess your case, and then it will be processed. After that, you can expect a visit from a home inspector. They'll come out to your home. They'll look around your home to verify the damages. And thereafter, based on your eligibility, you can expect to receive assistance from FEMA, either direct deposit in your banking account or receiving a check in the mail. You'll also receive a letter telling you what type of assistance you got and how you're expected to use that assistance. So that's typically the way it goes. But the key in all of this is to apply if you have uninsured or underinsured losses. Many people hearing this may say to themselves, why apply? I won't get assistance. There are thousands, millions of people out there who are in my same position. And that's the wrong answer. You don't want to delay your recovery. If you think again that you have uninsured or underinsured losses, that's the time to connect with FEMA. And we encourage you to do that as soon as possible. I also want to mention that when you connect with FEMA or your insurance company, it's very important that you document the damage. Take photos, take pictures, document on lists some of the losses that you had. So when you're presenting that information, we've got as comprehensive a list and understanding of what you lost as best as you can. So that's part of the process. We want people to apply if they think they have those needs. We don't want them to delay their recovery.
Right.
Get it started as soon as possible.
So real quick, if people are denied, what is your message to them? And I just want to, real quick, if you can mention for folks who might be renters and business owners, they can seek help as well.
Absolutely. If you are a renter, you can come to FEMA. We can help you with that rental assistance. If you own rental property, that's construed as a business, you want to go to the SBA, and that's going to be sba.gov/disaster. Those are our partners when we come into theater for disaster relief and assistance. They work with us side by side, and they're here as we speak. If you receive an ineligibility letter, you said denied. We don't like to use that term, somewhat derogatory, but if you get that letter, then what you want to do is make sure that you appeal. There may be something as simple as missing a word or words on your application. Maybe you misstated something. Maybe we couldn't verify the occupancy, the ownership, the identity of the person who owned the property. So it's very important that you appeal as soon as possible. And hopefully, any changes, any additions to your application will improve your chances of eligibility.
Mr. Brown, we thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Florida voters will decide whether to undo abortion restrictions put in place by the state legislature this year. Voting in favor of Amendment 4 would enshrine abortion rights into the state constitution. Both sides are passionate about their cause, and they are backing their beliefs with cash. Two groups leading the charge for and against the amendment have spent more than $70 million this election season. Southwest Florida in Focus looks at how both sides are trying to get out the vote. And we should note that this story contains topics like sexual assault that might be disturbing to some viewers.
God forever and ever.
At Sunday Masses across our state, priests have taken time to diverge from their typical homilies to try to convince parishioners to vote no on Amendment 4.
Even if you think abortion is okay in some circumstances, don't be duped into voting for an amendment with such misleading language.
First and foremost, we're also looking to pray.
Father Tom Carzan tackled the topic recently at San Pedro Catholic Church in Northport.
So is it difficult to talk about? Yes, but that's also our mission.
The Catholic Church is encouraging priests like him to talk to the nearly 2 million Florida Catholics about what it considers a spiritual obligation to protect life from conception to natural death. This video of Bishop Frank Duane outlines the church's strong opposition to Amendment 4. Duane leads the Diocese of Venice, which covers Catholic churches in Southwest Florida. The video has been played during Masses and published in social media.
It is true that the church would never suggest you vote for a particular candidate. However, in this election year, it is critically important to remember that shaping the moral character of society is a responsibility of people of faith.
But the diocese knows this won't be an easy win. Despite the church's opposition to abortion, they know Catholic opinions are in line with most Americans. 6 in 10 U.S. Catholics say abortion should be legal in all or most cases, according to Pew Research. But the church believes most people want some limits on abortion, so ads and campaign language against Amendment 4 warn that the proposal is too vague and would mean few regulations on the procedure.
This amendment is not a good answer, regardless of where anyone stands on the issue of abortion. We're speaking about an amendment that is extreme and deceptive.
Other church denominations have also united against the measure, even getting help from Governor Ron DeSantis and other allies through conference calls, which provide strategy and talking points.
Vote yes on Amendment 4 to protect women and girls.
Meantime, Amendment 4 supporters have significantly outraised their opponents in campaign dollars, allowing them to purchase more ads and build a bigger media campaign like this one.
At first, I realized there was no etiquette for how you talk about being raped.
That's Kathy Mayo in a video conversation with her daughter, Juliana. Mayo is president of the Lee County chapter of the National Organization for Women. She and Juliana participated in a video series highlighting people's reasons for campaigning on women's rights, including Amendment 4. Mayo shares how a gang rape in her 20s eventually inspired her to get more involved with issues like reproductive rights. And Mayo's daughter talks about having an abortion in her 30s.
Having needed to have an abortion, I just, I wouldn't want anybody to be forced to have a kid.
But Democrats know to get this amendment passed, they'll need to split the ticket in a state that has voted solidly Republican in several election cycles, a party that traditionally supports abortion restrictions.
It's a lot of generations that are concerned about what's happening in our country and about the threats to democracy and the threats to women's rights.
Mayo's organization regularly joins dozens of other groups and events to try to win over one person at a time. They hope outreach events like this one at Florida Southwestern College will gain voters who might not know how abortion rights have recently changed statewide. Joining us now is Stephanie Colombini, a reporter with WUSF. She's been covering the abortion issue statewide for the last 2 years. Stephanie, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
So, Stephanie, hope you can clarify for us right now, what does the state law say about what's allowed currently when it comes to abortion?
Sure. So abortions generally in Florida right now are banned after 6 weeks of pregnancy. That means that 6 weeks after, a person's last period would be starting that count. There are some exceptions to that ban. Those include for survivors of rape, incest, and human trafficking. They have until 15 weeks of pregnancy, but they do have to provide some documentation that they did survive an assault. So there is that caveat there. There's also an exception for having a fetal fatal abnormality. If there's something wrong with the pregnancy, you have 2 trimesters to get an abortion. For that reason, doctors have to certify that there is, that the fetus would not survive. And then throughout the pregnancy, there is an exception to protect the life of the mother. And that is, or the pregnant person. But that also requires doctors to certify that is actually an emergency that endangers that person's life. Psychological conditions don't count for that. So we're talking about things like an ectopic pregnancy, or if your water breaks early, some similar complications like that.
So in talking to both sides on this issue as they try to get out the vote, there were very different interpretations as to what Amendment 4 would mean. So if it passes, define that for us. What does the amendment actually say and mean?
Sure. So the amendment says that no law would get in the way or delay somebody's access to abortion before viability. That usually means around 23, 24 weeks of pregnancy, or if a patient's health provider deems necessary after that. There's also a statement that says, this won't get in the way of a state policy that requires parental notification for minors obtaining an abortion. So that's what the language says.
In terms of the impact that this amendment would have if it passed. Can you tell us what your thoughts are on that? Obviously, you've been following what the changes have been so far, but how would the passage of this amendment impact both patients and physicians?
Sure. And so, both sides, supporters and opponents, will tell you different things. And then I can kind of break down what they're saying and what I've heard from kind of neutral experts, legal experts. Supporters of the amendment say this is returning the abortion decision and conversation back to a patient and their healthcare provider, and leaving the government out of that conversation. Opponents of the amendment are concerned that it's too vague. They say, that the health provider in particular, that isn't as clearly defined. That could, so they're worried it could mean somebody who isn't, say, a licensed physician could provide abortions, or that health could mean any sort of health issue as opposed to like a real health emergency. I've talked to legal experts who say that is not a good argument. That and the Florida Supreme Court also ruled that, the ballot language was acceptable when they, allowed the ballot to, the measure to appear on the November ballot. And so really the sum I've heard from constitutional law experts is that this will take us back to what life was like really before the Dobbs decision overturned Roe versus Wade in 2022. And if you support that, that's when abortion was available until viability in Florida for years. If you want to return to a pre-Dobbs Florida in terms of abortion access, vote yes. If you are satisfied with the 6-week ban and you do not want to expand abortion access in that way, vote no.
And then, assuming there's passage, then the question becomes an issue of what is defined as viability, right? How many weeks?
Viability is a pretty standard medical term, even in Florida statute. And that's another thing that kind of came after Roe versus Wade. We've seen lots of state abortion policy talk about viability, and it usually is a generally accepted 23, 24 weeks of pregnancy, maybe 25. Doctors, ultimately would make that call. But that has been kind of verified as being pretty standard language you do see in these policies.
Stephanie, we appreciate your reporting on this. Thank you so much. Florida voters have already turned in hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballots. There's still time to vote in several different ways this election. That includes mail-in, early voting, or in-person voting on Election Day, of course. Southwest Florida in Focus spoke with Collier County's Supervisor of Elections about differences you'll see when casting your ballots. Joining us now is the Collier County Supervisor of Elections, Melissa Blazier. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's start with this. There are some changes that voters need to know about, especially when it comes to mail-in ballots.
Yes, so going into this 2024 election cycle, the biggest change that voters will see is that in order to request a vote-by-mail ballot, voters are going to be able to, or they're going to have to, provide some additional personal identifying information when making that request. In the past, you could simply call our office, give us your name and your address, and we would fulfill that vote-by-mail request for you. Now voters are going to be asked for their full legal name, their residential address, the last 4 digits of their social security number, as well as their full Florida driver's license or ID number. And that's so that we can verify that the voter is who the voter says they are. In addition to that, vote-by-mail requests now are, you have to make them on an annual basis. So any vote-by-mail requests that we had across the state of Florida for the 2022 election cycle, they all got wiped clean at the beginning of 2024. So every voter, if they wish to vote by mail, and a lot of us in the state of Florida say it's your insurance policy, please request that vote by mail ballot just in case you can't make it to the polls in person during early voting or on election day. Request that vote by mail ballot, but you have to do it for every election cycle now. You also have to request it at least 12 days before Election Day, which is a little different in this 2024 cycle.
So time is running out.
Yes, so October 24th at 5 p.m., that is the last day, the last time that we can accept vote-by-mail requests for the general election.
And as far as the drop boxes, I know you don't call them that anymore. You'll correct me there, but what has changed?
So they are called secure ballot intake stations in the state of Florida. We do not have drop boxes. You can find at any of your county's supervisor of elections office, we are required by law to have that secure ballot intake station in our main office. If we have satellite locations, which we have 2 satellite locations in Collier County, and then during early voting, as long as we are conducting early voting, we are required by law to have a secure ballot intake station in that early voting location, and all of them must be manned by a trained election worker. So you will not find a secure ballot intake station in the state of Florida that does not have a human being managing that box, essentially.
So certainly, since the last election, we've been hearing politicians, obviously the former President Donald Trump, as well as local politicians, regional, state politicians, questioning the integrity of the election. It's already happening now. Well, first of all, frustrating for you?
It's very frustrating. So I have been an elections administrator for over 18 years now. So seen a lot of changes in the state of Florida. And, our governor says it best. And I think that we're known around the U.S. as Florida is the gold standard when it comes to conducting elections. And that's in part because of the legislative changes that are made on an annual basis in the state of Florida. We're not resting on our laurels. We are constantly trying to make improvements and trying to strengthen election integrity within the state.
Melissa Blazier, thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you.
While our recent hurricanes from Ian to Milton have been so tough on Southwest Florida, they provided valuable lessons from homeowners learning how to better prepare for storms to emergency officials delivering more effective evacuation strategies. Another recent success story, Charlotte County's progress at protecting animals during emergencies. More pets than ever before found a safe place at a Charlotte County emergency shelter during Hurricane Milton.
We did really good this storm. We housed 553 animals in our emergency shelters during Milton from start to finish, and that is a record.
Brian Jones, the division manager at Charlotte County Animal Control, remembers previous storms when Animal Control didn't plan for hurricanes.
We found out that a lot of people had either evacuated and left their pets behind or stayed home with their pets and didn't evacuate because of the animals that they had. And both of those things was just unacceptable.
Now, all county shelters accommodate pets. Jones says there are still lessons to be learned. Many people didn't bring their own crates, so there was a shortage. Others wanted help evacuating with their pets when it was too late.
We did have some people the last minute evacuees got caught and the waters were rising and they needed out. And, the responses had stopped because the sustained winds were 45 miles an hour. They had to rely on neighbors in some cases.
My family learned a similar lesson as well. We found this lost dog the Saturday after the storm and drove him to the Suncoast Humane Society in Englewood. You are so cute. Despite not having power, their team helped us check if the dog had a microchip, which could help him get back to his owner. Our new furry friend had a chip, but his owner information wasn't listed.
He's healthy. It just looks like he may have gotten out over the recent storm that we had.
We eventually learned that Animal Control can pick up animals 24/7. Fortunately, Boomer's owner was frantically searching for him. He had contacted the same Humane Society, which led to a happy reunion. We met Boomer's owner, Jeff Crusho, in Port Charlotte. We all learned how critical it is to update the information on your pet's chip.
He's so precious. He's my baby, man. He's all I have left. I lost my family, and that's all I got.
At the Animal Welfare League of Charlotte County, staff member Stephanie Crum was proud to show us some empty cages, more than usual, because when the public heard WGCU's story about the joy of fostering pets during a storm, they got a record response.
just droves of people for days waiting in long lines so that they could help us out. It was amazing.
Crum says more than 400 animals found foster homes within 3 days. 47 people decided to adopt.
And actually, we expect that number to go up because we have a lot of fosters who are just saying, we actually really love this. We're going to keep the dog or the cat a little longer. They're a really positive part of our lives right now in this really sad time for a lot of people. They bring a lot of joy.
Crum learned how generous the community can be when you get the message out. Hurricanes Milton and Helene have left a mark on Southwest Florida's ecology. Trees that are usually lush and green are now brown and bare. WGCU investigates whether our area's landscape will bounce back and what's the tipping point after so many damaging hurricanes. That story and more coming up next week on Southwest Florida in Focus. Have a great week, everyone.